The following program has been pre-recorded, so please don't call in at this time. If you wish to participate in the program, tune in at 5 p.m. every Wednesday for A Pause for Thought on Baton Rouge Community Radio. Good evening, fellow humans. This is Wayne Parker with A Pause for Thought here on Baton Rouge Community Radio, coming to you from Baton Rouge Community Radio. Welcome to the show. We're off to a rocky start, I suppose, but there you go. Anyhow, this is Wayne Parker. We have Lang Baker in the studio tonight, and our topic is, can President Trump or any other politician really bring back manufacturing and coal mining jobs? And talking before the show with a few people here, I realized I had to focus on the lower skilled or medium skilled jobs. Can they be brought back by any politician, despite their promises to do so? And before we, Lang, by the way, Lang Baker's here tonight as usual, and good to have you, Lang.
Hi, Wayne.
I do want to point out before we get rolling into the topic, though, everyone, that we are giving away, WHYR Radio is giving away 2 tickets to the locally produced documentary series Better, which we talked about last week on this show. It's playing at the Manship, premiering at the Manship Theater tomorrow night, February 9th. The movie starts at 7, and there's a reception at 6 in the Manship where you can meet all the filmmakers. And they're all local filmmakers. This is the locally produced documentary series on the struggles, many people's attempts to deal with the problems that we suffered in the summer of 2016, which I'm sure you're all aware of. So it should be a very good locally produced and locally informative show. And that's first come, first serve. If you call in 343-9927, 343-9927, you can claim your tickets, first come, first serve. There's 2 of them, and that's for the documentary series Better, a locally produced group of short documentaries at the Manship. Okay, moving on. Lang, well, you know the topic. We talked about that, and I don't want to pick on any particular political party or anything, but generally, politicians in general always promise to bring more jobs to America, generate more jobs, force jobs to come back, and it's the medium or lower skilled jobs that have gone away in America. And that was a great deal of Donald Trump's appeal when he was running for president. And it's interesting, but The Economist, which is a worldwide magazine, is produced in Britain, I think, but it covers the world. They had an article in their January 14th edition that was titled, "They Don't Make Them Like That Anymore." And talking about politicians promising jobs, they state here that the problem with such rhetoric is that manufacturing has not really gone away, nor has it held still. Some processes that used to be tightly held together are now strung out across the world, and some processes that used to be quite separate are now as close as the workers and designers who share a shop floor. There's just, it hasn't really gone away, like I say, it's changed a lot. What have you seen on that?
Well, yeah, I think that's I've seen that in several different places I've read, and a lot of the controversy I've seen in what I've been reading is trying to explain why that's happened. Some are claiming offshoring, some are claiming automation, and there's disagreement over what the numbers are as to those 2 factors' contributions and even the method to come up with those numbers.
Right, but also I'd add, too, that why offshoring occurs is also a factor, as I learned and get ready for the show. And that was pointed out in the Economist article as well. They state that because of so much value being added at the front end with engineering and the computer technology and all that, there are many, many fewer jobs left that require human beings and they add much less value to the end product, and so they can't afford to pay them at American wages.
Well, yeah, there's that issue in the manufacturing sector, and then there's been a lot of new jobs created in the service sector, and there's now controversy or an issue being raised about how much automation is going to affect those kinds of jobs.
Yeah. I'm remembering now the automats in the 1950s, where they had a whole wall of little drawers like mail post office boxes, and you could look in and see a hamburger or whatever, and put in a coin and get your burger out, stuff like that. So now I guess, like you're saying, it's going to become more sophisticated like that, I guess. But yeah, it's possible.
Yeah, well, one of the articles I was reading was talking about radiology, reading lung cancer scans or lung scans, X-rays, to determine whether there's possible lung cancer there. And the automation with the computer analysis of the images is proving more accurate than the human examiners, and with zero negative false positives compared to 7% false positives by the human readers. So even that kind of a high-skill job is with the advances in artificial technology, is likely to be transferred over to what you might call robots.
Yeah. Well, actually, I remember seeing a story not too many years ago that surgeons now often employ computer technology and some form of robotics because it eliminates human error, for one thing, and it's more precise, basically, and it's not subject to anybody sneezing and stuff like that, So, I don't know anything more than that, but they were saying that computer technology provided more precision in a lot of surgeries. But what got me thinking about this topic, of course, the presidential campaign and all that, and yet again, people promising to bring jobs back to America. Back in 1982, a book came out, and I read it when it came out, by John Naisbitt. It's called Megatrends, 10 New Directions Transforming Our Lives, and he talks about the major trends that had been going on since the late 70s, and of course this was in the early 80s. And by the way, he was the one, I believe, that coined the service economy, the term service economy, because he said that manufacturing jobs, the lower skilled job or medium skilled jobs would be going away, and in fact had been going away during that time, and it would be information technology, service things like, communication, delivery services and whatnot that would replace the manufacturing. And I think we've seen that happen since then. And what's it been, almost 35 years, 40 years since then, or something like that? But anyway, this is what he wrote just concerning microprocessors, computers, and manufacturing. He says, the potential of microprocessors is awesome. The automation of factories and offices, once a futuristic pipe dream, imagine that, futuristic pipe dream, is becoming reality. It is no wonder, then, that computers have inspired fear and mystery in workers ever since their powers were first uncovered. Computer technology is to the information age what mechanization was to the Industrial Revolution. And you think about that, and that's exactly what happened. We went from very low manufacturing because, people made everything by hand in an agrarian society, and then when factories and mass production were put in place, there were a huge amount of jobs that went into the industry, and it was revolutionary, and it caused tremendous wealth all over the world, with the Industrial Revolution. And now, back here in the 80s, in the early 80s, computer technology was being predicted to have the same impact on the whole industry and the wealth in the world, and it sure has, I would say, But he goes on to state here that the most vivid example in recent technological history, and keep in mind this is 1982, is the movement of robots from the first to the second stage of technological innovation. Robots have expanded beyond the dangerous jobs into the unskilled and skilled labor market. At Ford Motor Company, robots test engines. General Motors uses robotic welders, and there are 10 government agencies where robots pick up and deliver mail. Robots are coming. The question is how soon. They're going to mean erosion in employment opportunities throughout the industry. And that was a quote from a retired vice president of the United Auto Workers, Irving Bluestone.
Back Before 1982.
Yeah, before 82. They were already seeing that trend coming, and you know, the labor unions and all understandably tried to stop it or tried to get rules in place to protect their jobs, but you know, eventually that just they have to bend to market forces when you're moving to a global economy.
Yeah, well, there was, I guess, historically you could say that earlier shift from agricultural to the industrial age, and a great shift in the job market, what percentage of jobs were agricultural versus industrial, and now there's this other shift in jobs from manufacturing, industrial, to service industry.
Mm-hmm.
And so it's like certain categories of jobs are disappearing and new categories of jobs are coming into being. And one big difference is the time span for this shift. It's accelerated tremendously.
You know, I didn't think about that language. You're right. The Industrial Revolution was what, the late 19th century.
So that took, of course, over decades. That changed from the agricultural-based economy to the industrial-based economy,
right.
Whereas what we're seeing now is taking place in a matter of years, in some cases even faster, with the greater acceleration of the introduction of artificial intelligence to handle things like what I was describing earlier, radiology scans, or with the jobs of paralegals and in processing documents in discovery, where the artificial intelligence can take the digital document forms and scan them much quicker through much larger volumes of documents to seek out what's relevant for the issues in a particular legal case. And so those jobs are also, there was one study here saying something like 47% of the jobs currently existing are subject to the potential of artificial intelligence advances rendering obsolete. Yeah,
the semi-skilled work and all that.
Well, it's even high-skilled work. One commentator here was saying that what it's beneficial, where artificial intelligence can work, where robotics can work, are with tasks that are routine, where you can lay out a set of steps that, like, computer processing can handle, that is predictable and can carry that task to completion, whereas the jobs that require a lot of multitasking, handling inputs that vary tremendously from one case to the next, require human judgment to handle those. And for example, with the story about the radiologist, is like the radiologist job is at risk, whereas his support staff, who has to handle the interface with the population, their job's not at risk. So it's like it all depends on what the skill set required for the job is, as to whether, to what extent it's subject to switching over to an artificial intelligence processing.
Well, and one thing that I saw in the Economist article was that so much now, like the radiology, you know, taking the x-rays or whatever, is done by computer technology, and that's where the bulk of the value is produced in that line, you know, and it's just with and manufacturing, the design and controlling inventory from manufacturer all the way to sales is where the value is added now by controlling that with computer technology and everything else, satellite technology. And the manual jobs like you're talking about simply don't add enough value to justify the high wages that they once did.
Well, that's according to social judgment as to how much wages a person should get, and that can get us off into the whole minimum wage thing.
But,
I mean, one dimension of this pointed out. One aspect pointed out in some of these articles about that is the that this change in with the automation and robots and artificial intelligence is breaking down the middle class. The middle sector of the wage scale is what's disappearing, and so it's all going to a lot more higher wage with the highly trained in skilled workers and the low wage
Right.
for the low skilled workers. And that gets us that would get society into discussing, well, how much is a person's time worth, and whether minimum wage should be sufficient so that anyone working in whatever job should be getting enough pay to have a decent living.
Yeah, I totally agree, Lang, and I maintain that all participants in any kind of business endeavor are of equal value, because if we take the free market theory literally and to the extreme, you can't operate a business without clerks any more than you can operate them without a manager. They all provide equal value. What determines wages oftentimes is how many people are capable of doing a particular job, and so you can deal them down, so to speak, and make them work for less because there's someone else is always willing to come in. And that kind of brings me to the ideas about minimum wage laws. Like in America, we could pass a minimum wage law here, but the companies, well, not so much with McDonald's, the restaurants, but global companies that have to compete with other companies globally. If they don't have the same type of minimum wage in their countries, they're going to undercut the American companies that have to pay the higher wage, or so it's going to hurt employment even more. Really, we can't just unilaterally raise wages in some of these industries, because they'll get beat out in the market globally.
Well, we're kind of getting off topic here, and
Yeah.
I think that would be an excellent show to have to talk about wages and minimum wages and
Yes,
what's fair compensation and that sort of thing. But back to the loss of jobs and the impact of offshoring versus the impact of automation on the loss of jobs. I was talking about did you need to say something there?
Well, I was going to do a quick reminder here. This is a live call-in show. Feel free to call in and share your questions and thoughts, 343-9927. Also, we are giving away a pair of tickets to Better, the locally produced series of short documentaries that is showing tomorrow night at the Manship Theater at 7 o'clock. Call in 343-9927 and claim your tickets, or share your thoughts with us. We have the choice or the option tonight. Anyway, Lang, you were talking more about the question between...
Yeah, we were talking earlier about the loss of middle-level jobs and middle-paying jobs, middle-class income, in the split into the super high-paying and the super low wages. So there's that issue. But then there's also the shift of what kinds of jobs are available and the loss of manufacturing, whether it's from offshoring or from automation. There are more jobs being created in other sectors. In the past 2 decades, according to one of the reports, nursing assistants has gone up over 900% in 2 decades. Teaching assistants almost 600%. So there are a lot of those kinds of jobs which require human interaction,
Right.
aren't subject to the automation problem, require people on the scene, so they aren't subject to offshoring. And yet some of these jobs, they're not fairly compensated.
No, I agree with that.
And so that's a question for society through its institutions to address, and as a way to make this adjustment that's coming, like it or
Right.
not, because of the advances in technology. And then another dimension of it I came across in some of these writings is the geographic location of the people who don't have jobs. And there was an NPR story not too long ago addressing this specifically, where they were talking to some people who are working in the field, and in Iowa, 2/3 of the counties have been declining in population, people moving out. And the question is, well, how is bringing back jobs going to help the people in these rural counties?
If they're not the same jobs that were there before, or And well, even if they're not going to be brought back to those places. Is what you're saying, right?
Right.
Yeah.
So that requires a whole different way of approaching the problem of lack of jobs around the country.
Yes,
and I think we've seen the impact of this on politics nationally with so many states that are sparsely populated having such a disproportionate representation in the U.S. Senate. When you look at every state gets 2 senators, but a lot of these states where they are losing jobs and where there aren't very many people there, they get a strong vote in the Senate.
Yeah. Yeah, well, there's also, it's countered by the House, and you know my opinion of the changes in our federal government. So.
And then you got the gerrymandering issues in the House.
Yeah, you got all those messes there. But I want to shift a little bit and take a look at coal mining. Because I've been wondering about the decline in jobs, because from what I can see, we haven't really reduced the dependence on coal in this country. It's a major contributor to our energy. I think it's a third of our energy comes from it. But, of course, during the last elections, as is going to happen in any election, I don't mean to condemn either side, but one side was screaming that Obama's environmental agenda is what killed coal mining jobs. And, of course, Hillary was going to kill coal altogether, I think she said, or something like that, shut down the coal industry. And I'm looking at a 2013 article from The Atlantic. And they state here that, but for all the rage over Obama's environmental agenda, mining jobs began disappearing in the region. And they're talking about the East, West Virginia and Kentucky in particular. Mining jobs began disappearing in the region long before he entered the White House for reasons that have nothing to do with regulations now coming out of Washington. In fact, coal mining jobs in Appalachia fared far worse under the Reagan, Clinton, and George H.W. Bush administrations than they have under Obama. It states here that according to employment counts from the Mine Safety and Health Administration from 1983, which is the earliest year for which the MSHA had data, to 1989, combined coal jobs in West Virginia and Kentucky fell from 79,000 to 64,000. 4 years later, under President Bush, coal jobs in the two states fell to 56,000, and by the final year of the Clinton administration, the state's combined total of mining jobs was 33,000. And they asked the question, so what's driving the decline? First and foremost, changes in the industry, is what they say. And they said, despite mining employment being cut nearly in half since 1983, the two states' combined coal output has basically held steady. It's advances in mining technology that have made miners more efficient. And so, and they talk about here how wages have stayed pretty much stable, but far fewer miners are needed now because they have machines like they describe here. And I also have this article from a newsletter from West Virginia. It's called the West Virginia Coal Seam. And they state that underground mining techniques have developed to where an underground mine that would have taken, hundreds of miners not too long ago can now be operated with, probably about 10 miners operating machinery that goes along a coal seam and burrows far underground and strips it off of the seam and sends the coal out on a conveyor belt or some other, conveyance, and they severely reduce the number of people they need,
Right.
And it's just a shift in the technologies. They become more efficient.
Right.
So, and those, you can't, what are we going to do? Get rid of those machines so we can get those jobs back, I don't see it happening.
Right.
But
yeah, so that's a clear case of automation rather than offshoring being the cause of the loss of jobs.
Yeah, and that's one case, right? But and like I said, I wanted to focus mainly on the middle skilled manufacturing and the coal mining jobs because those were the two that are biggest in many Americans' minds, and they certainly factored very largely in the election just now. But you were saying earlier before the show, and I think earlier in the show, that there are really many more jobs being created now, but they require different skill sets and more understanding of technology, right?
Well, some of them do, yeah.
Well, yeah, the regular service workers, which John Naisbitt predicted, a lot of them that working at fast food and all that.
Well, there's services and there's services. There's the banking industry as a service
That's
industry
right.
as well, and
Satellite, telecommunications, computer technology, that's all service, right.
And so some of these studies are saying that actually the job market is increased in the areas that are highly technical.
Right.
So in those cases, the automation and the computerization is requiring advanced skills rather than the computerization taking over the job from the human being.
And I'm guessing our educational system isn't keeping up with that.
I think that's fair to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's one of the problems. And like we discussed also before going on the air, there have been many, primarily, I guess, Democratic politicians who have wanted to have federal job retraining programs, but they ended up being overfunded and ineffective, I guess, for the most part. But,
Yeah, and again, back to the geography of it, the issues. Are you going to train coal miners in West Virginia for a job in California?
And are they going to be able to go? Right.
Yeah.
People can't just pick up and leave, I mean, that's one of the responses I get to people who cry about being unemployed. People tell me, well, they could just pick up and leave. They could just go. They could just learn a new trade. As though that something like that is easy, And,
right.
But that's just, one of the problems. But, yeah, it's like the jobs are different. They're in different places. And what are you going to do with these people,
And the skill set shift is happening so much more quickly now than in the past as well.
Right.
It's not like you have a generation to change the jobs that people are being trained to fill.
Yeah, we didn't stress that point enough when you made it before. But, yeah, the Industrial Revolution grew and changed over a century, really. Whereas the technological revolution is going up exponentially, basically. It's occurring very quickly. And it's getting faster, and the rest of the world is growing up. They're developing, so they're competing more, and it's just changing. Everything's in flux, and we don't have anything in place to handle those changes, I don't think. And but you were also saying that Germany does fine, right?
That was someone else that made that comment, but yeah, it would point out that Germany, and I'm not that familiar with the data
myself.
Right.
Yeah, that was.
But Germany is.
They've maintained a manufacturing economy, but it's because they educate their workers.
They've got
to raise their skills. Yeah, because they're a socialist country, I guess, right? Social Democrats. But anyway, there was my political plug for the evening. You're listening to Wayne Parker and Lang Baker on A Pause for Thought, coming from Baton Rouge Community Radio here in Baton Rouge. We have just a couple more minutes to go, and I'd like to remind you, you just have a couple minutes to call in, 343-9927, to get your free tickets to Better at the Manship Theater tomorrow night. It's a locally produced, or series of locally produced documentaries from here in Baton Rouge that illustrating the efforts to recover from some of the struggles that we all faced in the summer of 2016. So call in and get your tickets. First come, first serve, 343-9927. We'd like to hear from you, or call in and, I guess, say goodbye, since we're about there, Lang. Anyway, I thank you all for listening. Lang, thank you again for your preparation and contribution.
My pleasure. Thanks for the topic.
And we'll see you guys all next week, and have a good evening.